Yesterday in the show, I predicted that despite the fact that nationally we were all acknowledging what a horrific tragedy, the murder of so many, especially targeted Asian women in and around Atlanta, that we're all acknowledging that, but that's not gonna stop Tucker Carlson and Fox News from using this for their own ends. And I predicted that he would get on the air that night and claim that anti-Asian racism doesn't exist, despite the obvious evidence still in the headlines at that point. And let's keep it real, it wasn't that difficult of a prediction to make. So here is what Tucker Carlson had to say about those attacks. Here is the thing about that really bothered Tucker Carlson.
So the guy's accused of murdering 8 people and all the questions were about race, okay. But notice, it's the politicians who jump in immediately to divide the country along racial lines. Vivek Ramaswamy has thought a lot about this. He's the author of the book Woke Inc. and he joins us tonight. Vivek, thanks so much for coming on. So you've been hearing this, this is such a sad story, a horrible story, but it's part of a much bigger story we've been told for the past couple of weeks, that these very real attacks against Asian Americans are somehow a product of white supremacy. I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever to support that. In fact, I think it's kind of the opposite of the truth. Why do they keep telling us that?
Okay. So you had Tucker Carlson there, Yasmin, who said, oh my God, how could they possibly talk about race here when not only is there no evidence, but Tucker said it's the exact opposite of that, which takes a bit of thinking to work out. So some people are saying white supremacy contributed to the shootings. He's saying the exact opposite is true. So I assume white supremacy actually made them less likely. I don't know. But anyway, what did you think about that? Were you surprised that, in the wake of this, even before funerals have been had, he's ready to stand up and say the thing about this that's frustrating is that people imply that it's racist?
I think I'm laughing because it cut to me right when I was like trying to make sense of what his logic was. And I was like, I had this puzzled look on my face because he can't do it because it's so illogical and nonsensical. And I mean, say what you will about Tucker Carlson, but he is a master of his dumb craft. Every time he's very predictable. You know what he's going to say and why he's going to say it. He's going to deflect immediately away from what is obviously the problem or the situation. And he's going to make it about like politics and not politicizing things, even though that's the crux of his whole show. That's what they do. They politicize things that don't need to be politicized, but they do it wrong. They do it, well, I guess not wrong. That's relative in this case, but they do it in a very self-serving manner. Yeah, and it's very predictable. And I think what's sad about it is how many people listen to him and think that he makes good points, I know. Even though his own network doesn't even support that. His own network says he doesn't make good points and people know not to listen to him. That's his whole thing. But he's still one of the most highly rated shows on Fox News. And what am I trying to say? He racks up the ratings as a tongue twister. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's making more
and
and more money there.
John Oliver even did like his whole episode on Sunday about Tucker Carlson. And that was before all of this happened, Yeah. The guy is crazy. He's crazy.
Yeah, look, you can 100%, and I think you're obligated to actually.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson's show exists to try to mainstream white supremacy. That's all it is. Yeah. That's what we have been trying to say week after week after week. And I understand a lot of people get bored with that and think, why are you focusing so much on this? Well, millions of people watch him, so it seems pretty important. But I agree that John Oliver sketch was absolutely awesome. We're going to refer to that a little bit later on with one of our other videos. But to whether the points he makes are good, that's a value judgment. So a point can be good because it's logical, or it can be good because it causes us to understand something that puts our beliefs better in line with reality. Those are some ways that a point could be good. A point could also be good if you only watch the news, not to learn, but to feel better about who you are and what you think about the world. And his points are very good for that. They watch to feel comfortable, to, as I often say, to have their hair stroked lightly and to feel warm and to be wrapped in a blanket. That's what it is. So when something happens in the country that's sort of bad for them, that points out that something they believe is bad or dangerous or wrong in some sort of moral or fundamental or philosophical way, Fox has a couple of different ways they can respond to that. One, the more cowardly way is to just not admit that it's happening at all. So when the 6th was happening, they largely didn't show it. when Trump's impeachment trial was happening, they just didn't show it. They pretended that it didn't happen. So if you're a conservative, you can watch that and feel comfortable. You don't have to deal with those harsh truths. This is, I guess, a little bit less cowardly, but far more dishonest, where this is an opportunity for America to realize that we are a fundamentally racist society, and that racism combined with the easy access, the not even delayed access to guns, is a terrible idea. That is an opportunity to learn. Conservatives don't want to learn that, so instead they watch Tucker Carlson. And what do they take away from the segment you just saw? That racism is a problem, that Asian Americans are continuing to be victimized, part of a centuries-long tradition in this country? No, it's that politicians are racist by referencing racism. White liberal politicians, or perhaps members of the squad that bring up racism, are the true racists. And they finish that show and they feel very comfortable. They didn't have to learn anything. None of their predispositions were challenged in any way. So I think in that way, they're pretty good points.
It's almost audacious of them to even take a stance on race issues in the United States when they have such a homogenous, not only the people who work at Fox News are homogenous, but their audience is also so homogenous. So it's very easy to preach to a choir when nobody even knows what's going on. You don't have dissenting voices. And I'm very aware of the irony that they had a brown person on to comment on this, but there's always going to be those, especially on the right, they like to cherry pick those few, let's call them Uncle Toms for lack of a better term, but they like to cherry pick those few and be like, look, here's a brown person who thinks racism isn't a thing. And it's like, well, it definitely is. But even in your own world, you can still find a bubble to live comfortably within, And I remember when I was dating, there was like a lot of people would be like, oh, would you ever date somebody who's like not into politics? And it's like, well, yeah, sure, because it's, you don't have to be as into it as I am. But then later it was like, what does that even mean? Politics is life, it's all these things. And then Tucker Carlson, people like him like to say, oh, you can't politicize these things, but it is politics, it's life, and there's legislation that's made because of these things. And, this whole thing with Asian Americans, this most recent wave of it was brought down directly from the president himself. So it's all politics.
Yeah, and parroted by Fox hosts who loved all of that China virus, all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.